What's up, everyone? Bright guy here. I did a video on UFC 217 potentially being the greatest card of this year and potentially the greatest card ever. Yeah. I did that a couple days. I think yesterday, a couple days ago. So I figured I'd do a video on UFC's greatest year. Now, this isn't just the greatest year as far as money they've made. I was thinking of greatest year as far as money as like pay-per-view buys, merchandise sales, money as in, greatest as in the best fights, as far as mainstream, what the mainstream thought of the UFC and kind of maybe as far as like news and how they did it on that aspect. So I'll give you a little history of me and the UFC and MMA. My first MMA fight I ever saw was Chuck Liddell versus Rampage Jackson. I was scrolling through the channels back when we had satellite back in the day, in 07. I was scrolling through channels, landed on Spike, saw Liddell Jackson, didn't know who either guy was. And it was about a minute prior to Rampage knocking out Liddell, and I didn't know what it was, but I liked it. I used to always watch street fights online. This website, psfights.com. I don't know if it's still going, but I used to go on that site and watch street fights. And then I saw UFC, Liddell and Rampage. I was like, holy shit, this is on TV. Then I remember seeing some WEC fight with Miguel Torres. I forget who he fought, but I remember it was Miguel Torres versus someone. I don't know if it was a live event or if it was a repeat. What it was. UFC hadn't bought WC at that point yet. And then, so since then, 2007, I've just been buying DVDs, buying pay-per-views, watching every event, just balls deep. And then I started doing these videos about a month and a half ago. So that's my knowledge on the UFC. As soon as 07 started watching it, as the years went on, I started learning about it, the old UFC. So yeah, so I'm just giving my little history on what just my opinion, on what I think the best event is. So I'll be going through the timeline of each kind of year. And then just giving my analysis on that. So from 93 to 2001, UFC wasn't really much. It was banned on pay-per-view. It was human cockfighting. We all know the whole deal. It summed up in that 20-year anniversary movie DVD thing that was awesome. I don't know why I called it a movie. Sorry, I'm getting notifications. I'm very distracted. So prior to Zuffa, UFC wasn't really much of anything, so I'm not going to even delve deep into those years. It was just kind of brawling years. For a while it was wrestling with the Mark Colemans that ruled. First it was Hoist with the Jiu-Jitsu, then Mark Coleman and the wrestling guys, and then they went to the era of Chuck Liddell and brawling. That's when 2001 on for a while. When Zuffa bought it, so 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004, they're still in debt. They're millions of dollars in debt, and they almost sold it. And then we all know the story of the Ultimate Fighter in 2005 that revitalized the UFC, saved the UFC. So 2005 is a good year for the UFC, great year for the UFC. Got them out of the slumps and blew them into the mainstream. So 2006, 2007, 2008, mainstream, that's when everyone was watching the UFC. It was cool to wear tap out. It was cool to wear Affliction. It was cool to be part of the UFC. All these MMA gyms opened up. Everyone's doing MMA. Everyone's talking about MMA. Everyone's giving their analysis on who the best fighter is. Oh, you gotta do that. No, he's got to do this during the fight. It blew up during then. It wasn't until around 2009 that we saw Silva become the GOAT. We saw talks of GSP becoming the GOAT. John Jones was in the mix. He was a young cat. He didn't quite win the title yet, 2011. we saw during the early years that Chuck Liddell, Randy Couture, those were the guys. Two guys in the UFC. The Tito was slowly moving out, but it was Chuck Liddell, Couture for the longest time, and then Couture lost, Liddell lost, and then we saw this little era in the UFC where they weren't the top guys anymore. BJ Penn, he wasn't around. There wasn't really much of a lightweight division. The welterweight division had Matt Hughes dominating, and then Silva came in. He's dominating, but it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't until 2009 that we started talking about GSP Silva talk. Then Frankie was champ. We had a lot of great champs during that period of time. 2010 is a good year. We had UFC 224, UFC 129 at that time. Those were the biggest pay-per-views. I know I'm missing a lot. I do apologize, but I know 214, 219 were the two biggest pay-per-views at the time. And then 2011, there was a steady pace for a while. The UFC was going on. It was going up, but it was a steady going up. They weren't launching themselves. We saw a bunch of Ultimate Fighters come out during this period, during 2010, 2011, 2012. 2013, again, kind of the same year, same stuff. Ultimate Fighter, big pay-per-views, couple big pay-per-views a year. Silva's still dominant. GSP's still dominant. And it wasn't until late 2013, Silva lost. So there's a new era in the middleweight division. George St. Pierre retired at the end of 2013. In November, we saw John Jones was still on top. We saw Cain Velasquez was champ, but we only saw him every once in a while. It wasn't until 2014 that we saw Conor McGregor. We saw Conor come into the UFC, and since 2014, the UFC's been on a bit of a rise. And I'm going to be looking at those years mostly. Mostly just 2015, really. Again, UFC just year after year, pay-per-views, fight nights, Ultimate Fighter. That's UFC really was. They're kind of getting away from social media. Not many people. No one's wearing tap out anymore. No one's worn tap out for a decade at this point. So we're seeing a bit of a transition where people are saying the UFC's peaked. UFC's died out because all the events. There's not many big stars. We have Ronda Rousey killing it until Ronda loses in 2015, but we still have Conor in 2015. So 2015 was a big year for the UFC. We saw Ronda do well, and we saw Conor do well. John Jones was still kicking around. This is a bit before his suspension and all that shit that went down. No Silva, no GSP. So we're in a bit of period where there's not many stars in the UFC. Fight nights aren't doing well. At this time, I know Fox, that big Fox card with Cain and JDS was the best card at that point on Fox. So 2015, the fight nights aren't doing well. The pay-per-views aren't really doing well until UFC 189. That kind of revitalized the UFC in pay-per-views. That was Conor McGregor versus Chad Mendes. Robbie Lawler versus Roy Mack. That was probably the best card at that point. Again, we have Mighty Mouse as champ. He's not. No one knows who he is. Who we got? Who's the lightweight champ at this time? 2015 lightweight champ Pettis Henderson. No one really knows. Pettis was on the Wheatie boxes at one point. So 2015 is a big year because of Ronda. Even Ronda losing's big. Conor McGregor 2015 is big. It wasn't 2016, and I'll just say this right now. I think what I'm going to be saying at the end of this video, or just as I'm concluding, 2016 being the best year of the UFC, in my opinion. I'll go back to 2016. So far, 2017, it's been a good year so far. There's no Conor fights, so the pay-per-view numbers aren't doing too well. We'll have to be honest with that. John Jones, DC, fought back in July 29th. That's a couple weeks ago. That pay-per-view numbers, I don't think they even reached 900,000 as pay-per-view buys. There's no GSP, there's no Ronda, there's no Conor. He's fighting, he's getting ready for the Floyd fight. So there's not much going on this year, not really much talking. We got Joanna killing it. She's been killing it since 2015. And then obviously Mighty Mouse has been killing it. Aldo's not champ anymore in the featherweight division. We have Max Holloway. He's a star. The only real star that we have in the UFC right now is John Jones and Conor McGregor. GSP set to return in November, but as far as right now, as of August 2017, UFC, we're still at. I don't know what much more the UFC can do. They got Fight Pass going on in the last few years. They got a lot of web series. They got Tuesday Night Contender Series now, so they're changing it up a bit. But I don't think the UFC is going to grow anymore. As far as I'm still getting all these notifications, and I know I'm kind of fumbling all over the place. 2017 has just kind of been a slow year, mostly just because Connor's not around, Ronda's not around, GSP's not around. I don't know, there's this point where the UFC, for the longest time, guys like Rashad Evans were, they were mainstream stars. Guys like Forrest Griffin, they're mainstream stars. You don't hear about these guys anymore. Someone like, who's a contender? Someone like a Yoel Romero. In 2008, Yoel would have been king. Everyone would have known who he is because everyone just knew every fighter. I don't know if because there's too many fighters. I don't know if there's too many events. There's too many other things like Netflix, and people are just interested in other things. But like someone like Yoel, no one knows who he is now. But he would have been a mainstream star in 2008. He may not have been champ in 2008, but he would have been a mainstream star just because he was a guy in the UFC. If you were in the UFC, everyone knew who you were. So big, I gotta go back. Big years for the UFC was when they bought Strikeforce and WC. Those are big years. But I'm gonna go back to 2016. As I said, the greatest year ever. I think it's the greatest year ever just because it had UFC 196. So that's Diaz and Conor, first fight. Co-main event was Misha and Holly Holm. Holly Holm came off the win against Ronda at UFC 193. So she was a big star for that event. That was a big event. So UFC 196. UFC 200 was big. 202 was massive. 205. What they all have in common is Conor McGregor, other than 200. 200 had Brock Lesnar. You look at all the biggest pay-per-view buys in the UFC history. 196, 200, 202, and 205 are in the top five. I think 194 squeaks in there. That's all in 1 year. So that's why I'm going off it being the best year in the UFC history, just as far as money. It's the best year. Again, mainstream, it's not too huge. Everyone by this point knows who the UFC is. I don't know if they have to go to other countries or they just need bigger stars, need to promote their stars a bit better, maybe. Maybe the stars need to promote themselves better. But no one knows who Woodley is. No one wants to see him fight either. No one really knows who Stipe is. So we have champs and we have great fighters that no one knows who they are, where 2009, 2008, 2007, they would have been megastars. So I don't know what you do there, but I'm going with pay-per-view buys being the greatest year in UFC history. So I just rattle off those. Now I have fights here that are written down that happened in 2016. Now these are just big names that happened. Big name fights that happened. So I'm going to go Cub Swanson, Ju Choi. That was a 206 in Toronto. I was there. Phenomenal fight. Lawler Condit. They're on the corners right now. So you can see Lawler, Condit. That was UFC 195 back in January of 2016. Remember, beautiful fight card, beautiful fight night. Diaz Conor 196, Diaz Conor 202, Cruz and Dillashaw, phenomenal fight. Silva and Bisping, beautiful fight. JJ and Claudia, their second fight. Their first fight, excuse me. Their second fight. Holm and Tate, Woodley Thompson. I know that fight went to a draw. This is the 205 fight. I know it went to a draw, but it was still an entertaining fight. A couple 10-8 rounds. We saw Woodley get Woodley get Woodley get Wonder Boy in a rear naked, and his face is going blue, it's going purple. He didn't tap, so that was a fun fight, even though it went to a draw.